Hey, it's Ollie, and in this video, I want to talk about a controversial topic, which is going to get me some flack, but there you go. It's about immersion and the relative benefits of immersion. Now, my central idea here is that I think immersion is not what it's cracked up to be. I think it's hyped far too much, often by people that don't really understand what it really is. And I think for most people that try to go for this, for immersion environments, it is probably I'm not going to say damaging, because obviously any time spent with the language, in the company of the language, is a good thing. But I believe there's a big opportunity cost to chasing this ideal of immersion, which is to say that there are other things you could be doing that are going to help you far more. So first of all, let's define immersion. What I'm talking about here is surrounding yourself with native level content, whether that is books and movies, podcasts, or people, being with groups of native speakers and things like that. Now, we've all heard stories of people who have had fantastic success with immersion. I've heard many of them myself. I know people who've gone for immersion experiences, often by living abroad, or else by attending some kind of program where they're fully immersed for a while, and they've had fantastic success with it. Immersion can work. There is nothing wrong with a strategy of immersion per se, but the problem is that for most people, it is very, very difficult to create a genuine immersion environment. Okay, so let's look at a few examples. If you go abroad in order to immerse yourself, then more often than not, what happens to most people is that you could go and live in Japan, for example. Many people do, and most people who move to Japan find themselves then surrounded by native English speakers, or else Japanese people who like to speak English, and can find it very difficult to actually be surrounded in a meaningful way with the language. You can obviously listen to it on the street, but learning comes from interaction, right? And you interact with people, you have responses, you get feedback, you improve that way. So there's that sort of practical problem, but also in many cases, if you go abroad, you may not be particularly happy where you are. Many people report this happening. It's happened to me a few times. Different countries. I know people that have gone abroad to learn a language and been really lonely and pretty depressed while they're there. So there's all these practical reasons and things associated with immersion. But of course, if you are the kind of person who's just very good at just turning up in a country, finding your way into a group of people, making friends very quickly. If you're that kind of person, it can work for you, and I've seen it happen. But for most people, it's simply not the case. Now, if you then translate this to a kind of home environment, so let's say that you're living at home in wherever. Take my case, for example, living in the UK and learning a foreign language from the UK. To try to emulate a full immersion environment is something that you're often told to do, right? So when you look at newspapers, websites like general topic, what do you call it, kind of mainstream media, when they talk about language learning, immersion is just touted as this thing which is what we should all be doing, and if you can do it, then you'll be fluent in a couple of weeks, and it's amazing and all of that. But in reality, at home, it's very difficult to do that kind of thing. So you could be, for example, you could have audio playing all the time on the radio. You could do what Katzumoto from All Japanese All the Time says he did, which is just to sit in lectures at university and just listen to 10,000 hours. I think he said 10,000 hours of Japanese. You can try to do that, but what you got to ask yourself all the time is this working? And in most cases, the answer is no. This comes back to a concept which I've been discussing a lot recently on the podcast, and especially since my interview with Stephen Krashen, which you may well have seen on this channel as well, which is the concept of comprehensible input. Now, comprehensible input, in case you don't know, is the idea that you learn language best. And Krashen would say the only way you learn language, but I think I'd say you learn language best when you are exposed to language that is at your level, plus just a little bit. So you can, we could say, for example, to put a number on it, we could say that you understand around, say, 90%, 9 out of 10 words you already understand. And that last 1 out of 10 words, the last 10%, is unknown to you, but you can learn it pretty easily because you understand all the rest of it, right? So the idea of comprehensible input is that you learn best by being pretty comfortable at the level of what you're listening to, but there's still just that little bit that you don't quite know yet, and that's where your learning comes from. If you surround yourself with, if you're a beginner and you put on the radio, and some people say, you just listen to hours of the radio and you'll learn. Never happened to me, and it's never happened to most people that I know, because there's very little benefit in just listening for hours on end to stuff that you don't understand. Now, if you just do that for 10,000 hours, then yeah, you will probably learn you will learn a lot, and you may well have great success with it. But the question is, what else can you be doing with those 10,000 hours? What else can you be doing with every hour that you just spend listening to stuff that you don't understand? Is it really helpful and productive to go out with a group of native speakers who sit there all night talking in the language, and you can't interact with them because you don't understand anything? Not only is it not an effective way of learning, but it's not very nice. It's not very fun. Again, there will be some people who just love that, who thrive on that. I'm not like that. Most people I know are not. I don't want to be sort of giving the impression that this cannot work and that you absolutely shouldn't do it, because for some people, complete immersion is probably the only way that they will learn. You've got to stage what you're doing. You've got to have a leg up. You've got to scaffold what you're learning in order to improve at a decent rate. The languages that I've become pretty strong at, I have had immersion in, but that's only been once I've got to a strong enough level that I can cope with it and I can handle it. Right. So I have lived in foreign countries. I've had groups of friends that I've spent my whole life with, every day of the week with. But at that point, I already spoke the language. I could already communicate. We could already enjoy our time together. It was meaningful. And so what that immersion did then was that enabled me to go from from good to very good, right? Because it wasn't such a big jump. That was what was comprehensible to me at that point. For most people, 99% of language learners, you're not at that stage. You're at a beginner stage or a kind of low intermediate stage. And so you have to use material that is comprehensible to you. You've got to find stuff that you can enjoy and find some meaning from. And that is not just kind of throwing yourself in at the deep end and doing so much of it that you kind of hope you understand. So there we go. There's a lot that I didn't say, and I probably could have and should have approached this from lots of different angles, but that's where I'm going to plant my flag for now. If you'd like to leave any comments, perhaps feed something in from your own experience, then please do. That's what the comments are there for. I'm expecting a few. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you want more of this, and please give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. And hey, even if you didn't like it, give it a thumbs up anyway, because why not? All right, see you next time.